Good day and welcome everyone. Today we'll be looking at finding the sum of an exponential sequence. The general formula for the sum of the first n terms of an exponential sequence is given by Sn is equal to a multiplying the bracket 1 minus r to the power n close bracket all over the denominator 1 minus r. Now, the second formula we have here is quite similar, but the only difference is the position of the r and the 1. Now, it's very important to know when to use these two formulas. Now, we use this formula when r is less than 1. So this formula is used when r is less than 1. Now, this formula is also used when r is, of course, greater than 1. Now, one simple way of remembering this two is that we have to avoid getting a negative answer in the denominator. So, if r was 2, this means that r is, of course, greater than 1. So, we can't use this formula because putting 2 into this formula, we already get a negative denominator. Therefore, we can't use this formula. So the basic aim is that the denominator must not be a negative answer. Now let's pick an example. Find the sum of the first 6 terms of 64, 16, and 4. Now, as we discussed in our previous video, this is an exponential sequence. And why? Because it has a common ratio. But first, let's define the parameters. A represents our first term. R here represents our common ratio. And N represents the number of terms in which we are finding. So let's find our common ratio, which will determine whether we use this formula or this formula. Now, to find the common ratio, we pick one variable and divide it by the preceding term. By the preceding term. So let's pick any of the variables. Let's pick 16, for example. 16. So our common ratio will be 16 divided by its preceding term, which is 64. So we get the common ratio as 1/4. So since the common ratio is less than 1, we are going to use this formula because r is less than 1. So we are going to use this first formula. And using this first formula, we avoid getting a negative in the denominator. So the second thing we have to find is the value of a, which is, of course, very easy. A is 64. And we've been asked to find the sum of the first 6 terms. So we have n to be equal to 6. Now the next thing we do is quite simple and quite interesting. We insert our parameters. So inserting these values, s subscript 6, since we are asked to find the sum of the first 6 terms, we have a, which is now 64, multiplying the bracket 1 minus r. Now r we have here is 1/4 to the power n. Now n is 6, since we are asked to find the sum of the first 6 terms. Now let me just put this in a square bracket here so that it will be much more visible. And let's do the same thing for the other side. So 1 minus the common ratio, which is, of course, 4. Now simplifying this formula, someone might just decide to punch this on the calculator to get an answer. Of course, you get the answer right, but you will lose some marks. So solving this, we get 64 multiplying the bracket 1 minus 1/4096 close bracket. This is the value we get from this 1/4 to the power of 6. Now 1 minus 1 over 4 of course gives us 3 on 4. So s subscript 6 gives us 4 on 3 multiplying 64, and the 64 times 4,095 on the denominator 4,096. Now if you are dividing any numerator by a fraction, we reciprocate it and multiply. So that's a very simple and easy trick. Okay, first we just reciprocate and multiply, and 64 we obtain it's already multiplied, so we just maintain it, and this is the value we get from this subtraction. Now we have fairly a simple and straightforward way. This one we usually just punch it on the calculator, giving us our final answer. So punching this on the calculator, we get the expression 1365 on the denominator 16, and this is our final answer.